Hey everybody, and welcome back. Back to the down and dirty quick videos. This one's going to be covering basic winching techniques, assuming you're new to winching or you just happen to enjoy my content. Anyhow, it's not that relevant what I'm using, but I have a 9,500 pound barricade. It's a synthetic rope winch. It's got the same clevis hook it came with, and it's got that worn shroud. So if you have to get over a stump or something, if you're sitting down in a hill and you've got to go over a hill and the tree you're going to use, your anchor point, leaves you with your rope going over it. We'll kind of cover some of those techniques later, but that worn black wrapper you see there is, for that purpose. So anyhow, 9,500 pound winch in the bumper, yay for that. Once you've got a winch, the first thing you should be looking into getting is your kit. So this is a Rugged Ridge 20,000 pound kit. So first thing we've got going left to right is the 20,000 pound tree strap, a 30,000 pound recovery or snatch strap, 2 4 3/4 ton D-ring shackles or bow shackles. We've got a winch blanket or a damper. Not that you need that specifically, you can use other items, but we will get more into that a little bit later. We've got a winch block or a snatch block, and we've got a pair of gloves. So that's your basic stuff right there. And now we'll get a little bit into some techniques if you did need to use this winch. So when you're picking your anchor, in this case your tree for your recovery point, you need to pick something, like I said, that's good, live, strong. Everything we're doing today is just going to be an example, just so you have some visuals to refer to. Now, we're on great turf. We're not bogged down, we're not stuck. But I also don't feel like running my rope out any farther than I have to and having to retension it or pre-tension it, which I'll explain. So this is your setup for a straight pull. We've got that 20 pound tree strap mated nice and low on the tree. We have the clevis hook hooked up, and you always leave the hook facing upwards. That way, the idea is, although it's unlikely to happen, if that hook comes off, it's more likely to kick down than if it was upwards, fly up and go at you. Moving back towards the vehicle about 6 feet, we've got our winch blanket here. Now, we didn't do anything to it. It's very light, it's not affected. So as it says right here, you need to have a minimum of 5 pounds in the pockets. You can put dirt in there, you can put a couple water bottles in there. The whole idea is that if something gives this way, it reaches back here, wraps up with that blanket, and it dampens it, brings it down to the ground, so it's less likely to smack into you. Another commonly accepted practice is having your hood up, especially because there always should be somebody inside the vehicle. Right now I'm just giving you some demos, so there's not. That hood is just one last bit of armor or deflection if something does fly back towards you. Speaking of things that fly back towards you, some people would think to put a D-ring shackle or bow shackle one of these ways. We'll cover which way is the right way and how tight to do it. But we had to finesse and finagle it. We're locked up, we're in here, and we've got less hardware, less metal, less failure points, and less things that can go flying. So remember, tree strap low on a good anchor. Minimize the amount of hardware you have to, things that can fail or come apart. Do what you can to protect yourself as the driver, if you are the driver, and keep everybody clear of the recovery zone. So whoever is coordinating the recovery, in this case, it would be ideal that you have one person outside running the winch controller, which I have a wireless and a wired. That's going to be pretty common as you shop for your winches. And one person inside the vehicle. Now, whenever you are winching, if we were trying to pull ourselves toward that tree, obviously we would be in neutral, or we'd be in drive, depending on terrain, and I'll cover that in a second here. But if we were going to be the anchor and we were pulling somebody, either a straight pull or directional pull, we want to make sure that this vehicle is in neutral. Brake on, parking brake on, because you go into park on a slight hill, you feel how you bump, that is just a small pin that holds you in park. That pin will break if the vehicle moves. So as a general practice, I can't think of any good reason to ever winch in park. Always keep someone in the vehicle and be safety minded. All right, so that's straight line pull. Now we're looking at a 2-to-1 or double line pull. So we've got the winch coming, the winch rope coming out. We've got our blanket right there, a damper. We've got our snatch block, and we have a bow shackle now, tree strap, and it runs back to this other 4 3/4 ton bow shackle right here. Not the most ideal to use your bull bar or bumper recovery points, but for this example, it will work fine. If you really want to get into some heavy recovery, then go ahead and look at frame mounting a specific recovery point underneath. And we're not under a ton of tension, just enough to give you an idea what we're dealing with here. So what you see is what you get. It's not that complex. You basically set up a very minor pulley system that gives you essentially a 2-to-1 mechanical advantage of your winch. So keep in mind, you've got a lot of pull force now. Make sure everything that you're pulling on your vehicle can handle it. And you're gonna have a similar amount of force on your anchor. It's not really changed there. Multiple blankets is the accepted practice. I only have one. I would weight it there where I have things coming to my vehicle on that line. Coming away from my vehicle, it would be nice to have one there. That way that clevis hook doesn't go flying down at anybody who's possibly downrange. So as I was saying, you can use other items. If I wanted to rig this up, I could put some weight on this, close that over on the rope, and actually secure it to it. That works as one damper or blanket. You can use some towels. You can use anything that's going to help arrest that line if it escapes. Again, hooking upward toward the sky. Over here on the shackle, when you're tightening it in, you'll notice if I go to screw this, I can still tighten a little bit more because you go all the way to snug and then you go back a half a turn or a whole turn. There's different schools of thought, but this idea is the same. Once you load it and put a bunch of weight on it, it doesn't bind itself in and become impossible to take off. Also, the direction of the shackle, we've got the biggest hunk of meat is the horseshoe, the D, the bow. That is not as likely to fly in that orientation as this simple pin. If that pin broke, one, it's probably going to stay right there, but it's less mass to be coming right back at us. If we had that reversed, you'd imagine if it broke, that hook is going to be pulled by the snatch block, by the rope, and it's not going to be a good day for the truck, unfortunately, but hopefully the driver and the operator of the winch remote are both safe. This brings up a great chance to digress into rope versus cable. So right here, if that rope breaks, it's got a lot less mass, it's storing a lot less energy, and it's not as likely to cause any real issue or injury. It has the potential, but it's less likely to. Braided steel cable can have violent and extremely traumatic consequences. So there's one of your cons with it right there. Okay, so now getting into a change of direction or directional pull. The clevis hook is just hanging right there, so we'll have to pretend that it is affixed to a vehicle at a proper and rated recovery point. So say for whatever reason, you're in an orientation where this vehicle cannot directly face towards the vehicle in need of recovery, you simply use that snatch block as a change of direction. So if we wanted to pull on the vehicle in this direction, that direction, any acceptable direction, we simply use that as our change of direction. The same rules for dampers apply. So we would need damper to protect that clevis hook from becoming a missile. We'd want dampers or blankets on multiple points of the rope. So just think about where that line produces any hazards or the hardware produce any hazards. Assemble those blankets around those areas. As a good rule, like 3 to 6 feet from them, and that's how you can set up your safety. The other biggest safety aspect is once you start building triangles or boxes with, like, you can do the single directional change, or we could do like a double directional change. So trucks here, rope goes this way, hits a winch block, goes that way, hits another winch block and goes this way. Anything inside of this triangle, or if it was a box, is the primary danger zone. Keep everybody away from it. Obviously there's no danger now because there's no load, but all your recovery gear is going to have general rules of your danger zones. So if you don't familiarize yourself with it on videos or in-person training, then you can definitely get some good tips from your gear. All right, so that was just a quick rundown on your winch, your kit and gear, some basic stuff on rigging, what you should look for, your straight or single line pull, your 2-to-1 or double line pull, some kind of ultra intro to change of direction stuff. So now getting into, just good things to keep in mind, best practices while winching. Regardless of whether you have a 1 or 2 battery setup, it is always good to do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off winching. So while you're under load, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. That'll protect those planetary gears, keep your winch from overheating, and it also keeps you from zapping all of your power. Again, I'm going to revisit the never winching park. The biggest thing that I've seen just online is people forget. They go to do the pre-tension or retention, which again, I promise you we will cover in a few. But they go do that and they do it in park, and then next thing you know, they cause themselves some problems with their vehicle. Otherwise, making sure when you're winching with a group of people, no matter how large, as long as it's anything more than just yourself, which is not ideal, you've got to have a good idea on how you're going to communicate what these hand signals or single word commands will mean, whether it's in, out, stop, or correlating hand signals. If you have radios on board or walkie-talkies, that's also a great idea, especially as you start to stretch distances out between two vehicles. So I keep saying I'm going to cover it. Let's just jump into that now. Tensioning your winch, pre-tension or retention. So this is only for us synthetic rope guys. I'm going to drop a couple pictures in a second as to what that looks like. But basically, when you first get your winch, it's just been installed. You just got it out of the box. That rope is just coiled around the drum. It's under no tension. It's not ideal for a lot of reasons. But what you need to do is read your manufacturer's guide. Mine is 500 to 1,000 pounds. So you run your winch line out. You get a weight that is in that range. And you tension that rope so it stretches it out a little bit and gets it in a proper position and ready to be used. So I'll drop some pictures in how I did mine. What you're going to see is my line mostly extended. I had ran it all the way out. I took the pictures as I was bringing it in, but I had actually 500 pounds of weightlifting weights on 2 different sleds and clipped in with my hook, dragging them slightly uphill. So I was definitely, without question, in that 500 to 1,000 pound range. So that's going to look like these pictures right here. The other thing I said I would talk about later, and we're getting to now, is whether you'll be in neutral or in drive, depending on terrain. So you're going to have to kind of close your eyes and think conceptually here. If we're in mud or sand and we're just stuck, we're bogged down, we're spinning out, we cannot get ourselves out. We've maybe tried whatever we have, be it boards, be it shovels. We don't have the ability to use a snatch strap. We're winching out of these smooth surface, if you will, smooth power delivery surfaces. Then we'll stay in drive. As we start to winch in, we will start to spin our tires to try to assist the winch because we have a smooth transfer from being stopped to beginning to move with the assistance of the winch. Once we lock up and we start pulling, we're going to try to make sure we don't drive over our winch rope with our communication from our spotter, and we're going to, certainly not overdrive our anchor. When we get into spots we want to just stay in neutral and let the winch do all the work is good, like rock and sand, or getting over something pretty hefty. Maybe you've dropped your back tire, one of your rear tires off of something, and when you would lock up, it's going to be pretty violent, or you're stuck spinning on some wet mud with some rock, and the second you maybe catch a dry spot, you're going to lock up and go. Those areas, if you understand what I'm saying, those areas are where you're going to stay in neutral and just let the winch do its work. Let your exterior spotter tell you when you've got it, when you've made it, and then you can go about disassembling your recovery. And then I guess last but not least, your winch is pretty exposed on the front of your vehicle whatever you're going through, it's going through. It sits pretty low. It's outside unless you've got a cover on it. Even mine's pretty well shrouded, but I mean, if I look right underneath that bull bar, I can see the top of my winch where I can turn it from free spool to locking up the drive. I can see where my plug is for my wired controller that I have in addition to my wireless controller. So that said, if you're going through some water, especially if you're going through some mud, you've got to do a little bit of aftercare. So with our winch being nice and pre-tensioned, it's wrapping around itself in that drum. If we splash through some mud, we shouldn't have all 90 feet or X number of feet getting nasty. So we can just pull out enough spools, maybe 10, maybe 12 spools, to get that whole outer area that's wet. Say we just did a wet crossing. We can get that out at some point, give it a chance to evaporate, roll it back in, or we can wring it back in with a towel to kind of help with some evaporation so we don't have any mold, mildew, anything that's sitting in there going to decay our rope. Muddy, sandy crossings or muddy, sandy days where we're really getting some mud up in there, the sand, for us synthetic rope guys, again, the sand's going to get in there and really start tearing up those fibers as it contracts and, you know, constricts. So we want to take it out. We want to rinse it. Clean your rope based on your manufacturer guidelines, but you do need to do some aftercare. So that about covers as down and dirty as I could reasonably get of a intro into winching, fundamentals of winching. Thank you guys for watching. For other videos that are somewhat similar to this, but more so covering specific items on the truck, just check out my channel. And one more time, thank you again for watching.